Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm Bailey. I'm the ministry assistant here at the church in Cairnport. I have been in this role since May, and I've been loving it so far, and I'm excited to continue on in a new season as college starts and high school starts here, and I'm looking forward to it. So this morning, I'm going to be talking a little bit about my experience working with the Briarcrest women's volleyball camps, both last summer and this summer. I've spent 2 summers with them now in different roles and in different capacities. Before I start, I just want to ask if, I know there are some people here that have attended Briarcrest sports camps in general or worked at them. If so, can you just raise your hand? Show who you are, if you've worked at or been at them. Awesome. Lots of people up in the back there. People down here. That's great. My first ever experience at, we call it Clipper Camp, was last summer, and I was just thrown right into the ringer. I grew up going to summer camps. And when I was old enough to, I devoted working my entire summer at these camps. I went to a camp called Kettleston Gospel Camp. It's on Last Mountain Lake, and I loved it. It changed my life, and it's something that I'm just so passionate about is camp ministry. So I was talking to the head volleyball coach for the women's team. Her name is Rhonda. She's no longer here anymore with the program. But I was chatting with Rhonda about a couple of my goals for the year, and one of the goals that I had was to fulfill my internship requirement for my Christian ministry degree. So I was in the last year of that program. I needed to find an internship, and I wanted to do something that was different than what I was used to because I'd done camp for so long at Kettleston that I felt like I knew it really well. So I wanted to step out of my comfort zone a little bit. And she pitched the idea to me of being one of the directors at the women's volleyball camp. In the past, we had normally done a week of camp. The summer before, we had done 2. And the summer that I stepped into that role, we decided to do 3 camps. Within a month of opening up one of our camps, we were completely full. We had 128 campers registered and a wait list of 70 campers. So we made the decision to actually run a 4th camp. So it was a whole new experience that I was not ready for, and the Lord had to prepare me in a lot of ways throughout the summer for each week. So the first week of camp that we hosted, it was the camp that we added on, and I actually got the opportunity to be the camp speaker that week. This was something I had never done before for teenagers. I'd done it for 4- and 5-year-olds. Very different crowd, very different group. It was really cool and really fun, and I loved it. But growing up at Kettleston and the camp that I was at, I was pretty naive to what I expected the campers to come in knowing, and I assumed that they were all going to be like the campers I experienced at Kettleston. So I thought they'd all know the gospel already, and they'd be coming ready to learn more about Christ and how they could dive deeper into relationship with him. But honestly, a lot of these girls came for sports, and the faith part was completely secondary to them, and it wasn't something they were even really excited about. Some didn't even really know that it's what we did at camp and that we had these programs. So I prepped all my messages in advance and wanted to give these athletes tools on how they could grow deeper in their faith. But I had to adjust almost all of my messages and really break down the foundations of faith and Christianity. And that was really cool because I got to think about what it would be like to hear that again for the first time and hear the value of the gospel and to hear that I was loved by the creator of the universe, this powerful and almighty God. And it was so awesome to be able to share that with these girls in a way that they understood, and through sport and talking about identity and all these things where we want to find our worth and value, but then having to put that on Christ instead is really cool. Every night I was sharing with these ladies, I cried. I'm probably going to cry this morning. I'm a big crier, so it's not really a surprise that I did. And I just feel things really deeply, especially when getting to share about Jesus and what he's done in my life, because I want people to see what Jesus can do for them. So even though I was speaking that week and with these girls every night, I did still have other responsibilities. Like I said earlier, I was part of our director team. My coworker was directing that week while I was speaking. But within that, I still had to coach. I was preparing for the following week of camp while having to rewrite all my messages to fit the context of the girls that I was chatting with. So it was a very big, busy week. And I really struggled to know how I could connect with these athletes, not being able to just devote my time to connecting with them at meals and sharing with them in between practices and things like that, because I had so many other things going on. As well, I had to reprimand a couple of athletes for things that they were doing, breaking the rules, not respecting coaches. So it just put a little bit of a damper on the dynamic that I had with some of these girls. And I was really nervous about how I could reach them and share with them, honestly, while having to have this other role, kind of in an authoritative role over them. So the first 2 nights of camp last summer, there were a couple of athletes that were really checked out, rolled their eyes when it was time for us to read the Bible together and worship together. But as the week went on, I got to slowly watch them engage a little bit more and just show interest in the truth that was being shared. And that was really cool. And yeah, that week was really impactful for me personally because God just reminded me of why I wanted to go into Christian ministry in the first place. And I love and desire to see people's hearts change and follow after Christ. So I really got to do that week and got to connect with athletes in a different way. Every week that followed that summer was great because I got to continually see campers learn about Christ, fall in love with who he was, and just begin to understand the freedom that they can have in Christ and that they can put their identity in Christ and not of things of this world or in their sport or anything like that. So fast forward to this summer. I had worked for 8 months completing my internship last year. It was really busy. It was really chaotic. If you want to hear crazy stories about camp, I've got a lot of them from that year. But this summer, I knew that I wanted to work at least 1 week, but I knew I couldn't commit to the whole summer for many reasons. So I committed to working 1 week in the middle of July, Monday to Friday. It was awesome. It was great. But going into it, I was really nervous. If you didn't know, if you are new to our church or you haven't been around all the time, I severely broke my foot in January of this year, 2024. And it took me out of the sport of volleyball for a very long time. I'm still not cleared to play. It's like been 8-9 months coming up actually right away here, it feels like. And yeah, it took me out of the sport for a long time. So coming in to have to coach every single day, and normally coaches play volleyball with the athletes and get to interact with them on the court. I was nervous because I knew I wouldn't have that opportunity this year to connect with them in a way that I knew how, in a way that I was comfortable with. So it was kind of discouraging to have to sit out from a lot of that stuff, have to sit out from the coaches versus athletes games, and not be able to connect with them in that way. But I just knew that I needed to trust the Lord. That had been the entire story of the months leading up to that, of just trusting the Lord, trusting his plan, even though I didn't understand what he was doing. And I knew that he would guide me in some way of how to connect with these athletes. So my role at camp for that week was to be a lead coach, a 6v6 coach, and then I also led worship, and I was a small group leader at the evening program. So I mostly want to talk a little bit about my role as a worship leader during that week, and then in my role as a small group leader, because those were the 2 times that I just saw the Lord the most at camp this summer. So in leading worship at Clipper Camp, it's a very different thing than leading worship on a Sunday morning for our congregation, because a lot of campers don't actually know what worship is. They don't know why we do it. To them, it's just something where we all stand up and sing, and it doesn't really make sense. It's a very vulnerable place for them to be, and it's pretty uncomfortable. So each week what we do at Clipper Camp is we pick one song, and we make sure we sing that song every night so the girls get to know it and they get familiar with it, and then we'll rotate through other songs here and there. And the song that we repeated last summer and this summer was Graves into Gardens. So each night we'd get up, we'd sing, and these girls sang so loud the words to this song, even though they didn't really understand what worship was. Sometimes they thought it was just funny to be loud and to not be serious and to kind of goof around. And at first I really struggled with this, especially last summer. They'd bring out their phones and have flashlights and be waving them back and forth. And I'm like, this feels like a concert. This doesn't really feel like worship. And I really struggled to see kind of what was going on deeper in their hearts. And I had a chat with my coach, who was also my internship mentor, that even though their minds aren't fully processing what they're singing, there's something within them, in their hearts, and they're just crying out to their Father, and they don't even really know why, but it's something within them that knows that there is something so much greater than them, that loves them and cares for them, And getting to witness that and see that and kind of shift my view of what worship could mean to them was so powerful and so cool. If you don't know the song or aren't familiar with it, the chorus says that there's nothing better than God, and the bridge just proclaims the truth about God and the might and power of God. He turned graves into garden, he turns beauty for ashes, seas into highways, and he is the only one who can. So we just wanted this song to be going throughout their heads as they left camp, because we played it every single day, just for them to be reminded of these simple but powerful truths about God, and that he is the only one who can, and that there truly is nothing better than him. So a really cool gift about being able to lead worship in that way, even leading worship on a Sunday morning and getting to hear our congregation, you hear a lot because all of the volume is coming towards you. So getting to hear these campers sing loud and praise God, it is just so powerful, and there's just nothing like that. And it has really just changed my life and my heart for worship and wanting to be involved in worship, because it's just such a cool way where we're just singing and praising the Lord, and he's working in our hearts in so many ways we might not even know. So that was kind of the worship side of it, and it's something I love and something I want to continue doing at camp. But I want to talk a little bit about my small group. So the girls I had in my group were awesome. They were so kind and so sweet. They were some of the older girls from the camp. So at this camp, it was grades 8 to 10. So it was kind of those girls in that grade 9 going into grade 10 age group. And I feel like in my small group, this is where I got to connect one-on-one with athletes the most. Other than that, it was in really big contexts where there were 30 girls, and I was trying to coach them and not connect with them. So it was really in small groups that I just got to dig deeper into relationship with them. The speaker for the week talked about Jesus as the light of the world and what it means to have his light inside of us. And we also talked about the battle between light and darkness, and we read through John 1 talking about how Jesus is the light of the world, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. So just them coming to understand that there is nothing more powerful than God, and that was really cool to see the gears kind of start to turn in some of their brains. On the first night of camp, we always do a blind poll. It's kind of my best way to describe it, just to see where girls are at in their faith, so the camp speaker can know a little bit more about the demographic they're sharing with. It was the camp poll that made me realize I needed to totally change what I was speaking last summer. So the camp poll is very helpful as a camp speaker. But I polled my girls that night. I had about 18 of them in my group. I had 4 girls say that they knew who Jesus was and that they were Christians. I had 1 camper who had never heard of Jesus, never been told about Jesus before, and was just at camp for volleyball because a friend brought her. And then the rest kind of fell in between of they knew who God was, they didn't want a deeper relationship with him, didn't really see the value in it. So it was a very unique group of girls, and from coming in last summer, I kind of knew that what was going to happen. But again, I'm always surprised when people come to camp at Briarcrest and there's only 4 that, really know who Jesus is. So each night at small group, we discussed how the girls responded to the message from the morning and the evening program, and I only ever had 2 or 3 girls respond to questions and actually engage in small group. But I really wanted other girls to engage in conversation, so I always tried to get them to talk with a buddy and then share with the group. But even then, it was just a really small amount of girls that wanted to share and were comfortable and had the courage to share with the rest of the group. So, just something I started in the summer before, when I was the camp speaker, was a morning devotion. Because when I was speaking, I only spoke in the evening programs. We didn't have a morning message. So I wanted girls to have an opportunity to just spend some more time in guided time with the Lord and what that can look like and what devotions look like. So I invited campers to join me at a table at breakfast and just read the Bible with me. So last summer, first day that I did it, had about 5 girls come, and we read the Bible together, ate breakfast together, prayed together, and then I sent them on their way. It was great. I was so happy I had 5 girls come. The following evening, I invited girls to come at breakfast, and the next day, I had 20 girls come. And we all squished at a table in the cafeteria, trying to eat breakfast, reading through the fruits of the Spirit. I accidentally led them to Ephesians 5 instead of Galatians 5. It was a bit of an issue. I figured it out. It was okay. But it was awesome just to have 20 girls squished at a table wanting to learn more about Jesus, and who had the courage to do that in a camp of 80 girls, come to the table, say, yeah, I want to learn more about Jesus. I want to be a little more serious in my faith. I'm going to do that. There's this one camper who I connected with last year really, really well, and her name is Tessa. She came to breakfast devotions every single morning, but every time the devotion was done and I had prayed and I was just finishing my breakfast before we had to go to the next thing, she always asked myself and another coach deep, deep questions about faith. And I really just saw this curiosity and this wonderment inside of her. She asked us to explain the Trinity to her and how the three persons of God work together for our good. And she just wanted to know really important and significant parts of the faith that I didn't think a 14-year-old girl would really care about. So her curiosity and relationship with Christ were just so strong, and it brought me to tears seeing this young 14-year-old girl just want to know Jesus so deeply and so intimately, and just have this beautiful childlike faith of, I just want to know more, and I want to know more about my Father. And just being able to see her this summer, see her growth, see her continued love for Christ, wanting to have meals with me, wanting to ask me questions, was just so cool. So I've just loved being able to see some girls from one summer to the next and their hearts change and see an active growth and love for Jesus in that. So fast forward to this summer, I invited girls in my small group to join me for morning devotions like I had the summer before. I was so encouraged by the response last year from athletes, and I hoped that this year would be the same. I had 2 girls join me at breakfast that morning, and then every single day after, I had no girls join me for breakfast. So it was really hard to not be discouraged, but I continued to invite them each night at small group, and in case they wanted to come and wanted to learn more, and I made myself available, but it just wasn't something that girls were as eager to do this year. So I just had to keep trusting God that he was moving in their hearts and that he was reaching them, because I didn't feel like I was, and I didn't feel like I had the connection that I wanted to be able to share Jesus with them. But I didn't realize how much God was working, and I'll get to that in a little bit, even though I couldn't see it, and I really didn't feel like he was. So on the final night of camp, and this is very standard for most camps, our speaker shared the gospel with the campers and gave them an opportunity to respond and say yes to following Jesus. We didn't have a formal altar call or anything like that, but she just gave the girls the chance to pray and invite God into their lives for the first time, or if they came to camp already believers, to commit to pursuing more of a relationship with God and to do so in deeper, more intentional ways. So after that prayer, we broke into our small groups. We always met outside of the stairs in the landing. This is where we had our sessions. Met outside. It was really hot. It was kind of a muggy night. Nobody really wanted to be outside after 4 days of camp. I had also lost my voice really badly, so I kind of had to whisper yell to the campers or talk in a really low voice like this so they could actually hear me. So again, just another thing where I was like, can I even connect with them if I can't even really talk to them? And just the enemy kind of creeping into my mind of saying these things. Anyways, I asked my group just to stop and think about a time in their life where they needed light. Whether they felt alone, they felt like they couldn't keep going, or even just a time that they needed comfort, because that had kind of been a theme throughout the week before. And this question actually started to get the girls to talk a little bit more. And instead of having 2 or 3 girls share, I had 9 or 10 girls share a time in their life where they felt like they needed light, what they did, what they wished they could have done. And it was really encouraging to see just a little bit more engagement from them. And that evening, I chose to share with them a little bit of my personal testimony. I shared with them a time where I wasn't living a life that was really glorifying the Lord, and how terrifying and lonely and isolated I felt in that time, and just that my heart was that they wouldn't have to experience something like that. I also shared with them my experience from the past year, something a little more understandable to them, of loving this sport, putting everything I had into the sport and instantly getting it taken away, and having to wrestle through my identity and worth and needing Jesus' light and guidance more than I ever had before. We just spent some time in prayer with them after they had shared. I thanked them for being vulnerable and stepping out in courage in their faith. And we spent time in prayer, and I just asked God that he would allow these girls to be bold and be courageous and be honest with themselves and in their hearts from what we had prayed for in the service in here with the speaker. And if they made the decision to follow Christ for the first time, that they would just be open and honest about that and excited about that. So after we prayed and before I dismissed the girls, we did another blind poll of the group. Again, this was just a way for us to know if the speaker was, reaching these girls and if their hearts were changed, and just a way for us to actually encourage other coaches at staff meeting the following morning. So all the girls closed their eyes, and I asked them, who gave their lives to Christ for the first time this week? Just to remind you, at the beginning of the week, there were 4 girls who knew Jesus, 1 girl who had never heard of Jesus, and probably 11 or 12 girls that kind of fell in the mix there that didn't really desire to have a relationship with God, but they knew who he was. So again, I asked who gave their lives to Jesus for the first time. And I got to slowly see that courage come out of those campers as 9 girls raised their hands slowly for the first time. This is exactly what I did when they did that. I was so excited, and the week was discouraging because I didn't really know if they were getting what was being shared, if they really cared about it, if they were just here for the sport. But there were 9 girls who made that first-time commitment, and one of those girls was the girl who had never heard of Jesus before until coming to Briarcrest Sports Camps. So it was so cool just to know that in 4 days, she learned who Jesus was, learned that she was loved and that she was so valued and that she wanted to be a part of the Christian faith and to be part of Jesus' family. It was amazing. It was great. And it was just so encouraging for me to know that even though I didn't see what God was doing, he was working and moving in the hearts of these young women. So after the small group that evening, I dismissed the girls and gave them a chance to stay back if they had any questions from the week. And I had a couple come to me, and they're just like, Bailey, what's next? Like, I've made this commitment. How do I keep learning about God? How do I keep pursuing him? And how do I grow stronger in my faith? So I directed them to a couple of devotionals, and we just looked through the Bible of where they could start reading to learn a little bit more and just get a couple more foundations of Christianity. And they were just so excited to leave with something to do and something tangible they could do to learn more about Jesus, learn more about how loved and valued they were. And I'm hopeful that I can see them again in the future to have conversations about that and just be able to share in that joy with them of what that looks like. So as I'm wrapping this up, I really struggle with wrapping things up in a nice little bow and making it sound really great. But I think it's kind of fitting because for these girls, their story and their walk with Jesus is just starting. And it's something that's continual and something that I hope and pray that they will grow in and continue to be excited about. And yeah, though the week I struggled a lot, physically this week was really exhausting, having come off an injury and having to stand and coach. All coaches, if you've ever been at Clipper Camp, you know it's a bit of a grind. If you've ever worked at camp, you know it's a bit of a grind to get through a week. But even though it was discouraging and it was challenging, God was working. And I was so humbled at the end of the week, just having to be reminded of, I might not always see it, but God is still working, and he is always working in such beautiful ways. So camp is truly just a wonderful place, whether it's Clipper Camp or another camp that you've ever attended or worked at. And I have seen God change lives at camp. He has changed my life at camp. And I was so thankful to have the opportunity to work with the women's volleyball camp for the last 2 years. And I can't wait to see how God continues to work through Briarcrest Sports Camps and every camp that God is present at. So thank you guys for just allowing me to share this morning a little bit about my experience. And yeah, it was just super cool to see God change lives this summer, and I pray he continues to do that and pray that he continues to touch the lives of those girls who gave their hearts to Christ for the first time. So thank you guys.